So recently I did an interesting test to do with physical separation of spaces, separating work from personal spaces, which is something I don't really do, but we've been talking about it a little bit recently on this channel. And more specifically, I've been thinking about whether it's beneficial in regards to managing many different types of channels and content, because obviously I've been setting up ways to do that, ways to manage that, which is why I've now got like another computer to my side here to manage all my other accounts. I did a bit of a test recently to kind of psychologically figure out what's a good approach to go about it for me. The thing I wanted to achieve was I wanted to start reading again. Typically, I've done quite a lot of reading in the past, but obviously with moving houses, things get put into storage and then it's a bit hard trying to reintroduce a habit into a new space. So what I did was I designed myself a reading nook in my new bedroom, which is a separate space to this studio. And I usually spend all my time here. So actually encouraging me to enter another space, like at the end of the day before bed, is like an interesting challenge. It's something that you have to want to do. Otherwise, I'll just sit here watching YouTube and looking at Reddit all day. So I designed the space, I spent ages looking through furniture and I was like, this needs to have a feeling to it. I think in the past, I've always kind of underestimated the power of a feeling, something unsaid, something that's difficult to measure, and that the feeling of the space is key to making it attractive to want to be in. And that's something that can't really be shared between different people because, if 1,000 people designed a space, it would look different for every single one of them. More so if you're sensitive to how spaces are presented, spaces have characters to them. So it's something that I haven't really done too much before because I never really had the space and opportunity to do it, but I'm leaning into it a bit more now. I succeeded with that reading nook because once it was done, once all the furniture had turned up and I'd put it in, I was very much attracted to being in that space. It was a very cozy thing, very comforting, and I actually started reading again. Finished a book on dinosaurs I'd been reading for ages, but then something interesting happened. In the process of trying to get set up with a workflow of managing many different channels and accounts, going into like this next phase of my business, I thought, okay, what happens if I try and turn the reading nook into a recording space? So that's the dangerous part about it, bringing work into a personal space. And it was interesting because I spent like a few hours trying different camera positions, linking things up. There were kind of cables everywhere. And I noticed that after a camera had been introduced into the space, I was no longer attracted to going into that space at the end of my workday. So I stopped reading again. I was like, oh, that's really disappointing. It's like there was this sanctity of the space, like it was a temple of sorts, and that it had kind of been violated by the presence of cables and devices that took up space for books and stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting because it wasn't that much of a change, but it goes to show how fragile the mood of a place is. And when a mood is fragile, it means that the activity either gets done or not done based on something very fickle. Now, in a server, I had a friend ask a question. I mentioned about doing multiple channels and they said about where do I find the time to do all that kind of stuff? Because, editing takes time for one channel alone, let alone two, let alone about 6. But one thing I've always found is that, a lot of my time is actually wasted. You don't realize how much time you actually waste. It may be difficult kind of calling it wasted time because if you're doing like high intensity sprints of work, then the wasted time is quite essential, like recuperation time for the brain. But I don't think things are that simple. I know there have been phases where I've been extremely engaged in work or inspired by something, and the work does not feel draining, and in some way it's energizing. So I don't think that not doing work is the only way to recuperate the brain. What I've always kind of figured is that if we can make work inviting, then it doesn't really matter. Like I don't need to be concerned about it feeling draining. If it's where I want to be all the time, if it's engaging, then that's it. That's the key to it. So this realization of how fickle the moods of spaces and consequently work can be, because I feel like my brain is very spatial. I think about things I want to do in very spatial ways. Then a secret key to it is actually just trying to make everything feel nice. And how do you do that? Like, what does that mean? I've never really been one for leaning into aesthetics much. I put out a post on my Discord server a few days ago asking for people to submit pictures of their work setups, or just it doesn't have to be work, just their like computer setups, and optionally like their Blender startup file and stuff like that, so I could review and rate them on video for a bit of fun. But it's really interesting because you kind of get to see how many people lean into putting an emphasis on aesthetics in their personal life, like in their personal spaces. It's always been weird as an artist, like I put more effort into aesthetics in the computer, like on the screen, rather than around the space, and it's always been very messy. I guess that's kind of a representation of personality in some way, but the people that have come in and looked at the space, like builders that have been working here recently, they call it an organized mess, which I think is a good representation of me. But I thought I would start to put more emphasis on it now, because given that reading nook revelation, of which I have now somewhat fixed, I started taking steps to roll back the intrusions I put in there and then make it pretty again, and that's working. It's becoming more of a personalized temple again, of which no cameras will ever be put, except for, if I take pictures of it, I can show you on the screen. It got me thinking about the most boring types of work I can do in here, like the coding type work, but the type of coding that's not even for exciting things, that's for boring things. It's never been inviting, but if I was doing it in a beautified space, would that make a difference? Even just the novelty of enjoying the process of doing it because you're enjoying where you are more than you had been previously, which is why I've put a fake plant there. Like, I wanted to make sure that wherever I look here, it feels good. I've still got work to do, but I want it to be a different kind of temple, because ultimately what I'm doing is trying to encourage that feeling. It's a very difficult thing to hold on to, because you can decorate a space how you think it will look nice, but it still doesn't make you feel good being in it. So it's like a real challenge. Like, because over stylizing something makes me get bored pretty quickly. It's kind of one of the reasons why I'm not sure if I'll ever get a tattoo, because I'd get bored of it very quickly. So I look at things like I'm looking at myself, what you're seeing now on the screen, and I'm just making comparisons. It's like, does this make me feel more stimulated, like this kind of space where I am, compared to how it was like a couple of videos ago? And the answer is yes. Do I feel good moving around in here? This gives me like a bit of a liminal office vibe while still being pretty, and that's something I really wanted as well. I even thought about getting like some polystyrene things and certain types of paper that are more tactile, just to make it more of an experience to be in the place. So I settled on the method for managing all different social accounts, because I went back and forth. This is something I've been doing recently, and a bunch of you had ideas for how I should do it. I have settled on mostly relying on Windows user accounts rather than virtual machines, and rather than just browser profiles, because it's compartmentalized enough while still being accessible. Functionally, it's quite useful. You know, I just open Chrome and they're all immediately already logged in to everything in every tab, and it's very easy to switch to users. So that's the one that I settled on. But the compromise is it's not on this computer, it's on that computer. So there's still separate spaces, but they're not really. You know, conceptually I played with having it on the other side of the studio, or having it just literally down the desk there, but even just having it that far away that I can't reach. I kind of simulated that, and that didn't work out. It needs to be something that I can literally just turn and see. It's right there, it's immediately engaging. It's not a bottleneck. You know, something being on the other side of the studio, being down there is a mental bottleneck. But there's like a kind of cohesive design space here that's nice to interact with. So that's the compromise. And it's very easy. So I literally just choose a different profile for a different brand. So all the brands will come up there on the side. So I just put my password in, and then that will get logged in. Obviously Windows does its thing. Go away Windows. Open Chrome, and we're already logged in to the brand. So it's fantastically easy. It's easy to transfer things from one computer to another as well. I've got a hotspot bay behind the notebook there, but also just like small USB sticks, because I can literally just hold it left hand, plug it in, drag something over, move, plug it into the computer, which is just down here, move it over. I can do shared, network spaces, but I like to keep things separate. So that's the compromise. Oh, I got notifications. Some people following, probably bots. Switch to Parasocial and logging in. Obviously Windows has done updates, and I hate they always do that thing where they try and remind you to set up the extra features. It's one of the most annoying things about Windows. There it is. No one wants to use OneDrive, and we're already logged into Parasocial. So that's the compromise. In the end, it turns out I did use an extra computer, did separate the spaces physically, but I did also use the user account switching. I knew there'd be some kind of compromise. Right, I think my grandparents have turned up, so I'm going to end the video here, but it's just been an interesting experiment. You can watch how the space is changing as I'm moving into this next phase of my business, and yeah, just thought I'd share some thoughts with you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.